You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here's your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 116, Negotiating Done Right with Jamie Lieberman. If you're an entrepreneur who wants actionable solutions to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I am looking forward to bringing this episode to you because you're going to meet my attorney and friend and our guest, Jamie Lieberman. Jamie is an attorney, podcaster, and entrepreneur dedicated to making legal accessible and to sharing the message that legal does not have to be scary. As the owner and founder of #Legal, Jamie draws on her experience working with entrepreneurs, influence marketer professionals, and creatives to help her clients grow and protect their business. She leads an all-female virtual team focused on providing clients with advice on a wide range of subjects, such as intellectual property, contracts, privacy, FTC, and general business law, as well as negotiation strategies. Jamie is a highly experienced speaker and is the co-host for the Fearless Business podcast. When listening in on my conversation with Jamie, you will discover what you need to do before any negotiation, how to determine your walkaway position, Jamie's 70-30 rule for phone negotiations and why they're a must, what to aim for if negotiation doesn't work out, and so much more. Now, before we dive in and meet Jamie, some of you have been asking about some ways that we can work together. Here's one way. One-on-one peak performance coaching consists of private coaching sessions to help you power up your productivity, and they're tailored specifically to you and your business. If you want to reduce stress, take back control of your business and life, improve your efficiency, accomplish your goals with ease, increase your profits, and be held accountable for achieving results, I invite you to work with me via my one-on-one peak performance coaching. Just head on over to theproductivityspecialist.com/coaching. And now let's get to the straight talk. Hey, Jamie, welcome to Productivity Straight Talk. How are you doing today?
I am great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. This has been a long time in the making. I should have had you on way before today, but our listeners get to meet you today, and I'm so excited. So, Jamie, we have just heard a little bit about your official bio, which is cool, but tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words, what would we learn if we followed you on Instagram?
I love that question. You'd learn I have two very crazy children.
Yes. That's so funny, as I thought that's what you were going to say. No, I'm just joking.
It's true. So you learn that I'm a lawyer, as you already heard. I've been a lawyer for almost 15 years, and I run my own law firm. We are all women. All my employees are women, and they are virtual and flexible. So one thing that I really is very important to me is empowering my staff to make sure that they feel like they have control over their schedules and that they can make the work-life balance that they need. So that's a big deal to me.
That is so awesome.
Oh, I love it. It is so counterproductive to force people to sit in a chair all day and when they don't need to. And so as long as the work is done and we have accountability to each other and we have a lot of communication with each other, it works. And so it's such a good experience. I'm so happy I can create that environment.
And you're creating something that's not really common. So if anyone's listening, this is not like you followed someone else's idea of how this should be. You've really been trailblazing on this because it really meant so much to you, right?
That is so true. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, there are not many virtual law firms. We do have office space, it's optional. I actually tend to not use it either. But yeah, it is not the traditional law firm model, which I love because I did that. I mean, as a lawyer for as long as I worked at a traditional law firm, and it was not for me. It definitely works for some people and it's appropriate in certain areas. But for me, I like autonomy. I like to be able to be creative. I like to be able to think outside the box. And it didn't do any of that for me. So I feel like I've sort of created my version of the law.
Yes.
I love being a lawyer. I do. Like I get teased a lot about it, but I'm cool with it. I think there's something amazing about partnering with clients, counseling them, helping them build something so that they know that there's always someone, an advocate for them in their back pocket. So when something does go wrong, which we hope it never does, I'm there. And that feels really good. And I form cool relationships with people.
Yes. So just in full disclosure to our listeners, you are my lawyer, right? And I loved you. Like I met you at a conference where we hit it off really, really well. And I loved that it was different than traditional. I think traditional, even for me, can seem somewhat stuffy or intimidating. And for me, I love the accessibility and I love the real lifeness that you understood my online business and you understood being an entrepreneur and all of those type of assets, I believe were so valuable to the relationship that I wanted with someone that would partner with me in my business. So I'm so happy. So today we have you here to talk about negotiating, which we talked about a bunch of different ideas about what to have you on for, but this is one thing that you are known for. And I think that is so important to our listeners because at many times in our business and our entrepreneurial journey, we find ourselves in negotiations with all types of people, all types of relationships. And it's a skill set that if we don't have could serve us really well. So Jamie, talk to us about in what areas or in what ways could we use good negotiating skills in our business and life?
So I always laugh that I use it for my children and everybody else just sort of benefits from those skills. Because if I can negotiate with my two young boys, I can pretty much negotiate with anybody. But in my business and frankly in life in general, I think it really, the thing that comes to mind traditionally is contracts, right? You're going to negotiate your contracts because when you're presented with a contract or when you present a contract to somebody else, I think the expectation should be there's going to be some back and forth. And so there's going to be some negotiation of those terms. So everybody feels good about the deal. And where can they come into play? If you're working with clients, if you're working with vendors, employees, contractors, all of those areas are up for negotiation.
Right.
There's also other things, if you're thinking about going to purchase another company or the assets of another company or go into partnership with someone like a joint venture, you want to create a product with somebody else or a service. There's loads of places that negotiation comes into play. You have your sort of typical sales process, but I feel like negotiation can happen if you go rent a space with your landlord. You're not selling anything, but there's negotiation, there's a back and forth. And I think having those skills and having like a good framework in place can make it a lot less intimidating because most people are inclined to just sign contracts and not go back and forth because they're scared the deal's going to go away.
Right.
So that's just not true. And so once we sort of get out of that mindset of being afraid to ask for what we want, it really opens your mind to be able to do so much more in your business.
Oh my gosh. Oh, my wheels are spinning for a couple examples that just came up out of that. One is I think that as entrepreneurs, we're either giving someone our agreement, right? And we just expect they will sign it. And then they ask a question and we automatically think that's a problem when it really doesn't need to be a problem if we knew how to handle it. And vice versa, maybe we're signing things that we're not completely happy with, but we feel like we're in a position where, we really want to work with them. And it never even entered our mind that we could ask for the contract to be tweaked, right? For me, I would say I'm pretty direct and ask for what I want, but when a contract gets put in front of me, I kind of assume like that's the contract and that's all there is, right?
I hear that a lot.
Okay. And then the second thing that came up for me as you were saying that is I just had a client yesterday talking to me about having to call a client and ask for the money that's owed and how painstaking it was. And honestly, it was affecting her productivity. Like this is all she could think of. She was procrastinating on it. It became this big deal. And I'm literally like, oh my gosh, if maybe she had these tools, that wouldn't have felt so big and she could have gone about her day and her other projects. But right now, that one situation is literally eating her up because money's due to her and she doesn't know what to do when she gets on the phone and talks back and forth with this person.
Yep. I hear that a lot too.
Oh my gosh. So when we're done recording this, if she has not made the call, I might just send her the draft of this recording so that she can hear this right away. Okay.
I'm going to give her a message. You got this. Just pick up the phone.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So now we have an idea of all the ways in which negotiating can be of value. And by the way, my son is the biggest negotiator, and we always joke that he's going to grow up and be an attorney, but not just any attorney, a defense attorney, because he defends stuff that doesn't even make sense. And he does a really good job. We're talking a 9-year-old that brings exhibits, examples, stories, and facts to every conversation that his dad and I have with him.
I wonder where he got that from.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things you want to raise your kids to have leadership and think for their own, but not in the house. You want them to no, that's for the outside world. Yeah. You want them to question the world, but don't question your parents.
That's right. That's exactly right. Everybody else but me. But I will say, kids are a beautiful example. I joke about my kids all the time, but kids don't have sort of those fear-based issues that we as an adults have, because they literally advocate for what they want. Mm-hmm. And they will negotiate all day long to get it. And if you sort of take that energy from them and use them as kind of an example where you think to yourself, my kid would totally ask for this, and it's not out of whack. My son or either of my sons will frequently ask for things. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I didn't think of that. Sure. Or we're going to do this version of that. And so he doesn't even hesitate. No matter how many times I say no, he doesn't hesitate.
That's right.
So it's good to sort of channel them and learn something from them, because they don't have those life experiences that make them think they can't ask for things.
Right. So if you followed me on Instagram, I think my son had to have been 4 or 5. And we went to a birthday party and they had cut the whole cake. And you get piece. He shows up, they're only halfway through the sheet cake, and he's like, I want that corner piece. And I took a picture on Instagram because it's half the cake's missing. Then there's a full half a cake and one corner missing. That's exactly what I thought, is he asked for what he wanted. There was nothing wrong for asking. He didn't go with the norms and just take what was given to him. And he said, I want the corner piece that had the most icing and his favorite color. Those were his reasons. And he got it and nobody questioned it. So I love your example, because we do see that all around us, is that the more often you ask, the more often you probably get what you want. So that's great.
And you also get used to hearing no, which is okay to hear. I think oftentimes in negotiations, people are so scared to hear the no. And I'm like, what's the worst thing that happens? They say no. Okay. So you keep walking, you keep breathing, you keep doing, and you just pivot. So it's okay to hear no. And I think kids are totally cool with that too. I mean, not always, but they're more resilient about the no. The no is the fear. That's really what it comes down to for adults. Right. Oh my gosh, we don't want to be told no. What if that means someone's gone?
Mad at me or doesn't like me, or it's the stories we attach to that. If I ask for what I want and it's a no, then maybe they won't want to work with me, or we run down this whole story lane that oftentimes there's no truth to.
Yep, exactly. I've never seen a deal fall apart because someone asked for something. The deal falls apart because the answer that they got was the answer that was their walkaway position, which we'll talk about in sort of the methodology that we're going to go into. But knowing what that walkaway position is, that's what makes a deal not go forward. It's not the no.
Right. Okay, then let's dig in. So where do we start?
So the first place that you start, and this is why I sort of love that we're talking about this on this podcast, is research. We have to arm ourselves with information. So a lot of people think of negotiation as your typical going to buy a car. When you walk into the car dealership and you're like, I will pay $10,000. And the dealership manager writes a whole bunch of things down, makes phone calls, pretends. He's like, you must pay $12,000. And then you end up paying $11,000, right? That's
right. It's a whole show, right?
It's a thing. That's not negotiation. That's one small piece in the bargaining. And hopefully, if we've done all of our homework, that piece is very short. So research is the way to go. You have to think about not only what your position is, but the position of the person that you're negotiating with. What do you want? What do they want? And it's really important that you almost make a list of all of those things. What's important to me? What's important to them? And then in a Venn diagram, where do we meet? Because that's really where the negotiation is going to be the most effective, is knowing how your interests are aligned. Because at the end of the day, no matter who you are and who you're working with, there's a reason you're having this conversation. There's a reason you're negotiating. They need something from you. You need something from them. You just got to figure out a way to get there. So you haven't even spoken to them yet, right? So you just have to have that in place. Like, what do I want from this person? Whether it's an employee you want to come work with you, a client you want to work with, or potentially someone you want to hire to work for you as a consultant of some kind. What am I looking to get and what do they want from me? And it's not just money. You have to think about all of, and I like to call them your currencies. What are the things that are negotiable? And so once you take money as one of the many things that are important, you can start to think more freely about how you can negotiate. So think about all the things that are important. So I'm going to use a client services agreement just as a good example. In a client services agreement, when you're creating something for someone, not only are you interested in how much you're being paid, but how quickly do you have to get it done? When are you going to get paid? Who owns the end product? If I create something from someone, can I use it in my portfolio? Do I get a link or some kind of, copyright or something at the bottom that says I created it? Because that might mean something. That's a currency. There's loads of things that you can put into that agreement so that you can get more than just say the dollars and cents. Obviously, dollars are important and I don't discount them, but that's not just what you're negotiating about. There's loads of things that you can. So you need to do your research. You need to think about what your best end result is, what your interests are, what the other party's interests are, how they may align. And then you have to think about not only what your interests are, but what are your pain points and what are their pain points? And how can you guys come together to help each other with those pain points? And so that's also really important.
Okay, I have a question. Are you doing this research like in a silo by yourself, or can it be part you've asked them questions?
So we're going to get there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Ahead. Sorry about that.
No, not at all. Not at all. That's a really great question. This is you doing your own independent research where you're looking online, checking them out. It could be looking at, that's the beauty of social media. There's so much information out there. And that's the other beauty of Facebook groups. You can go out there or to your tribe, right? We all have our group, we're crew. As entrepreneurs, particularly many of us don't have partners, or even if we do, we got a crew of people we trust. Go to those people. They may not know the person that you're negotiating with, but they may know the industry. They may know the norms. Try to get as much information as you can when you're talking with someone in a particular industry. So for example, in my industry, the legal industry, if someone comes to me for legal services, the price is not negotiable typically. But there are other things that maybe that they ask for me. Can you get this done a little bit quicker for me? Can you do X, Y, and Z for me? Can we add this in here? And so there are even negotiations that happen on my end with my clients where I'm like, okay, I can stick you here, or I can put this here, and I can do that and move things around. Or some people say, hey, can you work on my project versus maybe one of your staff members? There's lots of things that we can do. But if you go in sort of knowing what the norms are in that industry, or if you do know someone who's worked with the person or the company that you're negotiating with, that's also really helpful. So doing your own research. LinkedIn is great, Facebook groups, social media websites, even just Googling it. You'd be surprised. Everybody writes about stuff.
Right?
Shocked what you can find. And so doing that research on your own so that you can go into that first conversation that you're going to have, which will be the next step, with a roadmap.
Okay. So one question for you is, for those people that love research, like they heard you say negotiations, research, yay. And they would do research all day, every day for weeks.
Yeah.
Is it appropriate to put a container on this? Yes. 90 minutes, 60 minutes, one day, so that we can move on to step 2. I just know my audience, and some people are like, because that's comfortable. I'll stay in research mode. So what would be an appropriate time, would you say, if you have, or does it always depend?
Honestly, I think you could do it in 60 minutes. I really do.
Cool.
It shouldn't be that much. You should really know what your interests are. You should be able to write it out really, really, really fast. And then once you figure all that out, you can see where your holes of information are, where you're not sure. So if you sit down and you think, what is the other party's pain point? And you're like, I don't know. Then you know that's where your holes are. And you may need to do a little bit of research on that. Or what are some other people? What are some other deals this person has done? If you don't know that, then that's where your research is. But you shouldn't spend a crazy amount of time because you're going to be talking to this person, whoever you're negotiating with, and getting information from them.
Okay, excellent. Step 2.
So the one other thing that you need to know from step one is not only do you have to know your interests, their interests, and you're guessing, like understand this is an educated guess. So you don't have to be held on to it. If you're not sure what their interests are, what their pain points are, you need to get that information, but just try to see if you have an idea of what that could be and be open to that potentially changing. The other thing you need to know, which you should be able to just know and write down, is what I just talked about. What's your walk away? When do I say this deal is not worth my time? It's not worth what is coming forward. And when am I going to say no? And I'm going to be the person who walks away. And you have to have a walk away. If you don't have a negotiation because you have no leverage. So it's really important. But the beautiful thing about the walk away is you should also create what I call a BATNA, which is a best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Say that one more time. Slower.
A best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Okay, cool.
So that means like, what am I going to get if for some reason this deal doesn't work? What would be amazing for me to get out of this conversation? So for example, if I'm pitching a client and it doesn't seem to end up working, what if I said to them, hey, I know this didn't work out really well, but if you know of anybody, please feel free and send them along my way. Or if a situation that is a fit for me comes up down the road, will you keep me in mind? Or do you know of anybody who you could introduce me so I could be on their podcast? Anything. Like you'd be shocked because every person you meet and every interaction that you have, something can come out of that. And so if you take what would be a great alternative to the end result, which is what you want, that takes the sting away a little bit if it doesn't work out.
And you have a plan. Like, see, I wasn't quite sure of all the ways this would affect productivity, but everything you're saying is 100%. So if you had just spent the time, negotiating and you walked away with a new client down the road, or like you said, an interview on a podcast, that if you didn't have this model, you would have been so focused on the yes or the no that you would have missed out on really reclaiming some of the time that's been yet invested in this negotiation. So really good.
That is exactly right. Yep. And you've only really spent 60 minutes so far, right? So, and I think about, because as an attorney, I bill on an hourly basis, but I do think about the value of my time.
Right.
And so if I've spent an hour, I then think about, okay, what's the value of what it is I'm either trying to pay for or get? And then that helps me with how much time I want to spend on the research as well. So if you're looking at a $50,000 contract, you may spend a little bit more time than a $2,000 contract because it may not be worth that much time.
Of course. That's great. Okay, awesome.
Yeah. So in your second phase, once you have all this, and we have not spent a lot of time or gone down our research rabbit hole, you're going to actually want to have a conversation. And this is where I like to challenge people, particularly people who like to live in their computers.
I was like, you just challenged them. You said conversation as in not face to face, but like not text, not email. Like you're
Correct.
really talking to somebody.
Yes. Have a conversation, get on the phone, and it can be 10 minutes. It really can be. And I will tell you that when I start all conversations, I understand and I'm really cognizant. I love to talk to people. So I understand this is not a challenge for me, and I don't minimize the people that it's a challenge for.
Right.
I could literally talk to a wall and be fine. And so I know this is something that comes easily to me. But the piece of advice that I give to people is don't jump into the negotiation or the conversation immediately. Talk about something so innocuous. And I have like an example I love to give. This is one of my favorite negotiations ever. I got on a phone call. This was years ago, and I was working for a company. It was a blogging conference company, and I did legal work for them and some other work. And there was a very high level potential sponsor. They were huge and it was a really big deal. And they were like, you like to talk to people. Will you talk to the high level sponsor? Because there's going to be a lot that goes into it. I was like, yeah, of course. So we get on the call and the woman gets on the phone with me, and it could have been super fast. She was very terse over email. And like, I was like, oh, this is going to be hard. So I just looked out the window and I was like, it is the most beautiful day here. That's literally how I started it. And she was like, oh, where are you? And I was like, I'm in the New York area. I'm right outside. I said, I live in a town, Hoboken. And there's just like 4 beautiful days out of the year. And we're in one of them today. And she laughed and she's like, my sister just moved to Hoboken. And I was like, stop it. And then she says, you need a babysitter anytime. So at that point, I literally dropped the phone and was like, this wins. I don't care if they sign on because every mom needs a good babysitter.
That is crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Okay, so when you said it's a nice day, you didn't really know if she was going to bite onto the bait or like if it was going to go down something. But now you're like two people talking, not two just random voices trying. Yeah.
Exactly. And the best part is I did get a babysitter and they did sign on, and it took 10 minutes because I was like, oh my God, I'd love a babysitter. Send me your sister's information. That's incredible. And she instantly relaxed. And she was just like, oh my gosh, so let's talk about this. We're really excited about you guys. And she was a different person. And there it was. And it was beautiful. And we signed the deal, and it was an amazing relationship, and it worked. And if I never got on the phone with her, one, I wouldn't have gotten the babysitter, but two, that back and forth could have been so challenging. And frankly, I don't know that I would have ever cracked through to find the person. And I still have a relationship with her. Like, that's how amazing
it is. So amazing.
She's such a good person. She's so cool. She went on to do other things, and I love her, and I have so much respect for her. And it really was all because I was like, man, it's a beautiful day. And that's it. It can be as small as that. And if the person doesn't bite, that's totally okay. If they just want to go right into business, it's fine. And yeah, of course, you just have to, roll with it, and they'll probably, give you one or two lines. I get some people who are like, I'm not interested in this right now. And that's all right. But on that phone call, in that initial call, you should be gathering information. And so my rule is you should be listening 70% of the time and talking 30% of the time. And so that should just be open-ended questions, getting the information because you have your plan and we've written it all down. And so now we have our holes. What do I need to know? Maybe I don't know enough about your pain points. Maybe I don't know why you're talking to me. Maybe I don't know how I can give you something extra to sort of sweeten why I'm the right fit for you, the intangible. Mm-hmm. You're filling in the holes, you're asking questions, and they should be open-ended questions, not do you need help? We don't want yes or no's. We want whys and hows and things like that.
Yeah.
And you should be listening. And I mean active listening. So that means you're not thinking about your next question. It means you are truly spending time focused on what the person is saying. And that's hard, right?
That takes a lot of practice.
It does. So I have a trick for that. And my trick is I literally write down every word the person's saying, because it's the only way that I can use that second piece of my brain that wants to do other things is to write verbatim notes like what they're saying. So one, I have really good notes. Right. And two, I'm actually focused on what it is they're saying. And I have notebooks full of these conversations that I have with people, and it's amazing. And so then after I've written it all down,
that's a pretty good hack.
It's an amazing hack. It works. So I learned it in law school, to be honest with you, because I'm a person who has a really difficult time learning when someone's just talking at me. I sort of need to read it. So I learned I could just take almost verbatim notes from my professors, and I would absorb because I was actually writing and actively listening and not doing anything else. Right. So I wasn't like wandering to look at like that meme that someone had just sent me or the email that popped up. It forces you to use that second piece that makes you kind of want to go, oh, squirrel,
Right. Okay, that was really good.
Yeah. So, and then what I do is, because you've been writing furiously, sometimes I'll just repeat back what they said. So let me understand, help me understand. I want to understand, make sure I understand you correctly. This is what you just said. And sometimes they're like, yes. And sometimes they're like, actually, no, that isn't what I meant, which is good. They'll give me more. And so ask those questions until you can get the answers that you need. Try not to insert any of your own commentary or selling, which is very, very, very hard, because the person's going to be telling you what they want from you, and your instinct's going to be like, oh, I can do that. I'm amazing. I'm the greatest lawyer ever. And yes, you must hire me. But you have to know why they need you, because it will help you down the road and they will feel heard, which is huge because not everybody really listens all that well. And then, yeah, so that's my next one is that active listening and answering of questions.
So I love your hack, and I think with more practice, right? Because you have to trust yourself that when the time comes that you're ready to speak, you can articulate because you've just done it so many times.
Yes.
My example to this is right here, right now, this podcast. For those of you that are newer to Productivity Straight Talk, humor me and go back to episodes 1 through 20 and my interviews. And I was reading thought out questions. And I literally did not care what the person said. I was on to the next question. And then they wouldn't even make sense. It wasn't even a normal conversation. And I thought, I'm so prepared. I know exactly what I want to cover. And as soon as I had enough practice behind the mic and got comfortable and just stopped and said, I have conversations with people all over the place. Let me just hit record, listen, and then ask the next normal person question. And I bet that makes a good interview. But it didn't come till I had experience, and experience gave me the confidence. And I would say that's probably similar in these types of situations, that there's opportunities all around us to practice this as in conversation. Listen, pause, and then reflect back.
I love that you just said pause. So that is my next hack for you guys. And this is one of my favorite tips, the power of the pause. People don't like silence. End of story. So when people hear silence, they start to fill it. And so one of the things that someone told me when I was a very young baby lawyer, I will never forget it, I had just come out of law school and I was taking my first deposition, which is a very scary thing. Particularly, I was a young female and I was in a room full of men that were 20 years plus my age. And that was really intimidating. And so I was like getting ready to take the deposition of an expert accountant, no less. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And I was so scared and I was preparing nonstop. And the partner, he was a lovely mentor and he was wonderful to me. And he came in and he's like, you're going to be fine. I wouldn't send you if I didn't think that you were ready. He goes, but I want you to remember one thing. The stenographer does not write down that you paused. And I was like, oh, because like the stenographer's taking down like all the notes. He's like, the stenographer doesn't write in the transcript. And then the lawyer paused. You just pause and it's okay. And no one cares and no one remembers. And so it's like the most amazing piece of advice, like taking a 5-second pause to gather your thoughts is totally okay. The person is not going to hang up the phone with you and be like, oh my God, she paused a lot. It just doesn't happen. You don't remember. And so it's totally fine to do that. Mm-hmm. And it also, honestly, 9 times out of 10, the person starts talking again while you're gathering your thoughts. And you get the best nuggets when someone starts to talk again because people want to fill space. And so they start to say all the things they may not normally say. So the power of the pause.
Love it. Yeah. Okay. That's really good.
Yeah. So after you've done all that research and you figured it all out, then you're going to go back to your plan and you're going to essentially say, okay, now I have all the information and now I can actually come to them with the right proposal. Because you can't give somebody a proposal unless you know what they need and what's going to be the best fit for them. You're going to use all that information in the proposal, and however you give your proposals, whether it's you send an email or whether it's you get it back on another call with them or you have like an official proposal. And then based on that proposal that's where the bargaining comes happening. And that's the back and forth. But at this point, you've narrowed so many things. You've already figured out the issues that don't matter to them, don't matter to you. That 9 times out of 10, there's like 1 or 2 things that are being negotiated because you're going to give stuff up that you know doesn't matter to you. And they're going to give stuff up that doesn't matter to them because you have all the information. So you may not realize it, but like, time frame may not matter to the person. The person may be like, yeah, you can get this project done in a month. And that might be your biggest fear because you have a huge project that's going on for the next 2 weeks. And you thought, oh, I'm never going to be able to get this done doing both. And I really want to land this client. So once you get rid of all of those things that are just not an issue, you can focus on the actual things that need to be negotiated. And so the negotiation actually tends to be pretty quick. Because you know all the information, you have the information. And if you need more, you just ask for it because you have a rapport with the person. And if you're really positive, like one of the things I always like to tell people is it's not personal, but you have to be cordial and positive. It should not be adversarial. And there's multiple theories of negotiation. Some people think you have to be super aggressive. I'm a kill 'em with kindness kind of person. The meaner someone gets, like the nicer I get. And that is a really good way of disarming people. As I do a lot of negotiation of pre-litigation negotiation for clients, which can get incredibly adversarial. And I just won't go that route. I'm going to continue to present my case and my arguments, and I'm just never going to go that way.
Yeah.
But collaborative negotiation is really the way to go. So always maintain a positive attitude. Always assume you're going to make a deal. Just assume it. And if you assume it, it comes across in your demeanor. You're not afraid. The person wants to work with you. They're like, oh my gosh, this person just assumes we're going to work together. So I guess we are.
Yeah. I mean, that would come across in every little nuanced word of like, well, when we work together, I'd like to see this in the agreement. Or when we like, instead of saying in the agreement, I need.
Yes.
Like just those little changes right there would be showing your hands of like, where are you coming from? Are you coming from wanting to collaborate or you're just trying to get out of the agreement what you can?
Exactly. So as long as you're approaching it in that way, it makes all the difference in the world. And so in those negotiations, you just end up staying really positive. You have a walk away. So you know that you're not living and dying from this deal. And so you know when it's going to be time to roll away. And it's okay to say that. Like you can say to someone like, I can't do that. That is the position where this deal isn't going to happen. And then they know. And that's an okay thing to say. Like I'm in a super contentious negotiation I represent a partner in a business that's going to be, they're separating and they don't have a partnership agreement. If you have a partnership, please have a partnership agreement. And they don't. And so we're negotiating every little thing. And there are two things that are walkaways. My client will go to court over them. And I've told the other attorney that. I was like, these are not even up for discussion. These are her walkaways. And he knows that he doesn't touch them. He knows that if for this deal to happen, they're going to have to, and his client has them too. And I know what those are. We're not even fighting over those. And so it's important that my client knows what's really important to her. And I elicit that from her and the same with him. So those aren't even on the table.
Okay. Excellent. So I am like having these flashes of all these times that I have negotiated in the recent past and whether I've used parts of this or how I'm thinking I could have, possibly done it better based on your tips and strategies here. Can I share one with you and we can see I was thinking maybe like do like a little dissect in like a real life situation.
Sure.
Are there more steps? Maybe I should do it once we're done with the steps.
I mean, honestly, once you've come to the deal, my last piece of advice, and we won't go too far in depth, is just please get a contract.
Right.
I do talk about the contract and how important it is, but please, if you are doing any kind of business deal with anybody, just make sure you put it in writing and have a good agreement in place. It will save you all the heartache on the back end.
Yes. So I have one question and then I'd love to kind of go through a scenario that I had recently and maybe that would be fun for the listeners. Well, the question I had was, say you're going back and forth and talking to them and you're getting information, you're listening 70% of the time. Is there like a rule, like there's no negotiation during that call? Like there's no proposal. So if they ask you, so where are you at on this? Do you say, okay, I'm going to take all this information and I'll come back to you with a proposal? Like, are you requesting a pause between those two phases?
It doesn't have to. If you're prepared to give the proposal, so I can use myself as an example. A lot of times clients will get on a call with potential clients. I'll do a consultation with them just to sort of get an idea of their business, find out a little bit more information about them. And if I can, I will tell them what at least the cost will be. It won't necessarily be all of the other things, but a lot of times for clients, they want to know that. And so if I can, and if I feel like it's an appropriate thing, I'll tell them that and tell them, we can certainly talk about lots of other things. This at least is the cost so you can get an idea about whether or not this is an option for you. Because sometimes it just saves time. Because if you're not willing to negotiate your price, which is okay, you don't have to always negotiate your price. If you're not willing to, that's your walk away, right? So I know what my walk away is. And if a client's like, I can't afford that, I respect that and I understand that. But I also know that that's not really negotiable for me. So sometimes that can be okay. If you have very elaborate, like I had one that was a very elaborate project. And so I said to him, I'm like, you know what, I need to take some time to review what you've told me. I'm going to send you an email in 24 hours. And he was like, no problem.
Yeah, I think they can respect that because you're all, then again, right then and there, you're just requesting what you need to be able to serve them better. And I'm not going to say no to that.
Right. No one ever has.
Right. So one of the times that negotiations come up more often in my business is speaking. So someone reaches out to me, they say, can you come speak at my event? And then I say, well, tell me about it. And then of course, yes, then I want to. I'm saying all the yeses. So let's just say, yes, I want to. And then I would say something like, okay, great. And what type of budget do you have to bring in a speaker? And then they'll tell me, and it's either on point or it's really low. And oftentimes it's lower. And so now it's up for negotiations. And I have my walk away that it's not worth leaving town and getting on a plane and doing that. But there are so many other benefits. What did you call them? Other currencies that are of value to me. Because I've been doing it so long, I know. But if you would have asked me in my early speaking, I thought the only thing you negotiated was like how much they were paying you to be there.
Yep.
So this example that I have was someone had asked me to come speak in Florida, and it'll be in August, and they weren't quite at what I require for the fee. So we're continuing talking, and I find out it's at the same hotel as a conference I'm attending 5 days before in the same city in Orlando. So that's 5 days apart. And so then I'm doing this whole discovery and listening, and what are their pain points, and what are they looking for? How did they find me? So how much does she want me? How much does she know about me? And that type of thing. Because I think what you would try to evaluate is, how much ask is there room to ask based on, am I just one of 100 speakers, or had they actually looked for me? And so I said, is your room budget in the same as your speaker budget? And she said, no, we have a lot more flexibility in our room budget than we do in our speaker budget. So I said, great. I would love for my family to come out for the 4 days before I speak to fill the gap between my conference. Would you be able to cover those nights in the hotel before I speak? And it was before we got off the phone, yes, which filled the gap between what they wanted to pay me and what I was willing to get paid. Mm-hmm. My family just got a vacation. I paid for their flights to go out, and now they get to stay there. And that filled the gap of not having to fly East Coast to West Coast, East Coast to West Coast, which was another value to me. Mm-hmm. And so again, there's all these currencies that had this been via email, and I wasn't on the phone with her, and I didn't ask the questions of if there's two separate budgets. It probably would have been a no, because I would have been thinking, well, now I got to stay in town for 4 or 5 more days, or I would have had to go back and forth. And so is there anything based on that you think, while it did turn out favorable, is there anything in there that you could tweak based on your tips?
I love that story. Okay. I wouldn't even tweak it. It's such a it's perfect. Like, can you always get more? Sure. Can you always push for a little bit more? Yes. But it satisfied what you needed. And that's the beauty of it. Like, you walk away with both the speaking engagement and a whole bunch of other intangibles that you didn't even think you could get, or you wouldn't be able to do. I mean, just not having to fly back and forth as a person who travels frequently as well. Oh my God, the value in that is enormous. And to get your family a vacation. No, I think you played it beautifully. I really do.
That was one of the times I'd have to say I was proud of myself. But the one thing that I was proud of was simply this. You started it with this. Think outside the box. There's more than one currency. Now, as wonderful as that story is, I probably have 10 more in my pocket that probably ended way too soon, where I only got stuck that it was revenue, or I only got stuck that it was a payment point. And so I love that you shared with us. And I wanted to just kind of piggyback on that with a story of there are so many other tangibles. And until we spend time with ourselves and know what it is we need and want, when we're in those situations, we're not armed with a pocket full of these things are valuable.
Yes.
One of the other things that I often negotiate for is video of me speaking, and like high-end video, because that's a value that I don't have to pay someone to come video me to get on my speaker reel, or, and they don't realize necessarily that that's a value. For me, if we're real close, I'll say, are you having somebody videotape? Can I have a non-copywritten copy of it? Like, can I use it?
Yep.
That has closed deals. That one little request.
Yes, I love that. That's exactly right, because you have to think about all the other things that matter. Because at the end of the day, the speaking engagement for you, taking aside the dollars from it, has its own intangible benefits. Like, even if you weren't paid, let's say, there's other things that come from it. And so adding the money onto it is amazing. And then if you add those other things, it makes all the difference. But yes, that requires that first phase. What are your interests? What do you need? What do you want? What are you looking for? And that's it. Knowing all of that and knowing what they need and what they want and where their ability to move is. Those are great examples.
Okay, I have 2-part question and then we'll close out. Like I hired you to redo all my agreements. So I have a client agreement and I have a speaker agreement. When they request a change in the agreement, should I don't even know how to articulate the question. Should I be able to change my own agreement or should I always defer that to my lawyer because it could have consequences I don't know? Like what parts of the agreement would be okay to change?
So for example, dollars, payment terms, how someone pays you.
Mm-hmm.
Things that you would probably want to talk to a lawyer about would be if there's any kind of change to intellectual property. So like ownership of content, the ability to share certain content. If somebody wants to change an exclusivity provision or a confidentiality provision, as long as, you can definitely get to a point where you sort of know how to read a contract.
Yeah.
It's the times where you look at it and you're like, that feels like I should ask somebody.
Yeah.
Go with your gut. Really.
Okay.
There's a lot of things you can change.
The things you highlighted yellow, which are edible, I'll change those. But everything else is concrete, right? Because you were like, these things can be changed or negotiated.
Yeah, exactly. And if somebody comes to you and sort of asks you a question, if you have a good relationship with your lawyer, and you know this, like you can shoot me a quick email and say, hey, somebody asked this, and I'll answer you very quickly. And I'm just not going to charge for that. Like we should have that relationship. And I believe you should have that relationship with your lawyer, knowing that if it's something that's going to take your lawyer like 5 minutes to answer, it's just really good service to just be like, I will answer that for you. Right. Now, if I have to go in and rewrite something or recreate something and it's going to take a little more of my time, I'll say that. But it's just, if you have questions, you should just be able to ask that question without fear that you're going to get slapped with a bill you don't anticipate or want.
Yes.
And it should be open to that. And so I think that that's really important. But yeah, we do write our contracts so that there's like the yellow parts and you're like, you can change all these. And some of the other provisions certainly can be changed. Like there's some stuff in there certainly that we could change. And I know you could change without me. But there's some stuff that gets a little bit complicated that sometimes if you pause, then just ask, I think is always really good. Your gut knows. You in particular, you're very savvy. Like you get it. And so I think you know.
I think that the reason I also ask that in context is that sometimes people ask something of you and you want to, maybe your gut is to say no because you don't know if it's actually fear. So the answer to this, if you're listening, is that Jamie should be your attorney. And then you just ask real quick for 2 minutes and you could possibly say yes and be a negotiation instead of being fearful of like, no, it ruins my whole agreement.
Exactly.
That's funny because, and the reason, I have one more little story. I could not believe how much negotiation is in my life until we had this conversation. I being asked to be a guest on a podcast and they sent me I don't know, it was like a waiver or disclosure to sign release. And in it said they could use my content in all these ways, but one of them was like in a book.
Yep.
And I am completely okay if you want to republish it or you want to take it from podcasts to YouTube and like all that stuff. But it literally said, I don't own my content anymore and she could use it in a book. And I said, hey, I'm really excited about being a guest. There's this one line I am not okay with. Would you be willing to take that out? And she said, no, I don't change anything my attorney wrote. And I said, okay, great. So, and that's it, like how I can't talk right now, but we were in email and I'm thinking, so what next? And so I just wrote back. I said, okay, please cancel my interview because it wasn't something that was like high value. Like, I mean, it was an interview and that was my, what'd you call it? Walkable term?
That's your walkaway position.
Walkaway term. Yeah.
Yeah. I have the same walkaway position. Actually,
cool.
I won't sign a release that somebody can just do anything they want with my content. And honestly, I don't think that should be standard in a release for a podcast interview, to be honest. If somebody wants to create a book out of a podcast interview, they should come back to me and ask for that very special permission and we can talk about that because I'm more than happy to work with somebody, but that's a little much.
It totally is.
Yeah, I've turned down podcast interviews for that reason.
Oh, you have? Okay. I thought I was the only. And so in that moment, right, you attach a story to it. I'm like, when I can't talk and it's via email, I'm like, so do I just cancel it? Well, like, what does that mean? I was like, well, yeah, like it doesn't matter that much. But what if the stakes were higher? we have those tendencies to like add a story or, second guess. But I knew that my content is just too valuable to just be reused and give open access to. Okay.
Yeah.
Jamie, this has been such an enjoyable conversation. And we could probably keep going on and on. We better close it out for our listeners today. So Jamie, how do our listeners find out more of you and reach out to you and contact you?
So you can find me at hashtag, which is all spelled out, -legal.com, hashtag legal being my law firm. You can email me directly. Jamie is JAMIE at hashtag-legal.com. We're hashtag legal on Instagram and on Facebook as well. And those are probably the best places. Oh, and also my podcast. I have a podcast called the Fearless Business Podcast. So you can hear all of our content on there as well.
Head on over and take a listen and subscribe to her over there. And you co-host that with our friend Mary as well, right?
Yes, our good friend Mary.
Yes. Okay. So I think you have something special for our listeners today. We talked about it the pre-show. If we could give them something a little special, what is that today?
So I have a very cool free download. It's a negotiation download, and I will put it up there. I'm going to give you a special link that you can drop in the show notes so that your listeners can go get it and sign up for it and grab it, and it will help you out in your negotiations to help you with your planning.
Okay, excellent. So I will share the link in the outro today. So if you're listening right now, you'll be getting it in 2 seconds. Jamie, thank you so much for being a guest here today. This was long overdue and so, so valuable for our listeners. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have loved having you listen to this episode of Productivity Straight Talk, but I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So based on what you learned today with my conversation with Jamie, what will you take action on today? I mean it. I honestly knew that she would make an amazing guest and bring so much value. But it wasn't until I was in the midst of this conversation that I realized that negotiation is all around us. And especially as we navigate our journey of entrepreneurship, realizing that so many conversations can actually be using negotiation skills. So I want you to see, just challenge yourself. Maybe a great next action step is the very next opportunity you have to see a negotiation, whether it's, jokingly with our kids, our spouses, in a relationship, on the phone, a potential client, a business partner, whatever that looks like for you. I want you to take action and really implement the strategies that Jamie shared with us today. I think that she also gave very practical ideas about how to not make the research so long and not to be in limbo, but really move through the process to be decisive. With my experience in business, I have noticed that honestly, one of the most unproductive places a business owner can be is in limbo. When there's a decision to be made, a way forward, and we get stuck in that little in-between space, it is very unproductive because we are not moving forward, right? And so action can't be taken because a decision wasn't made. And the action that needs to be taken is dependent on that decision that needs to be made. And this could be whether you are going to talk to an employee or negotiate something with an employee. This could be whether you want to let someone go or you want to hire somebody, whether you want to partner with somebody, you don't want to partner with somebody. All of these are really big pivot points in our businesses. And when we delay those decision makings, it's very difficult to feel as though we are moving forward. So based on today's episode with Jamie, I would really love to hear, what are you going to take action on? If you are in our productivity community, I would love for you to share that over there. And if you're not yet a productivity community member, you can join us on the inside by going to productivitycommunity.com. Now, are you ready to achieve success in a big way? If that's a hell yeah, then it is time to power up your productivity. Perhaps you've considered working with me and you're not sure what the best way for us to work together is. I totally understand. And that's why I invite you to have a discovery call with me. And during our call, we will figure out what the best next steps are for you and your business. So head on over to theproductivityspecialist.com/call to schedule your call today. I am really looking forward to talking to you and mapping out what is the best next step. And maybe that's working with me. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's one of my master classes. Maybe it's working with me one-on-one. I promise you that I will listen to where you're at. I will meet you where you're at and give you an honest recommendation of the best way to move forward. And I want to close out thanking you so much for leaving me amazing reviews and really sharing this episode with other entrepreneurs. If you haven't already, I invite you to share this episode or any episode that you have found valuable with another entrepreneur, because you're giving them the gift of increased productivity, decreased stress, and that matters. That matters to you, it matters to me, and it definitely matters in our businesses. So thank you so much for sharing Productivity Straight Talk. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.